Today we're going to be talking about smart light bulbs. This is a dumb light bulb. Allegedly this is a smart light bulb. My first experiences of smart light bulbs didn't go very well, but I've been testing these for quite a while now, and let's see if we've turned a bit of a corner. The only bulb that is changing now is that one there. So 1 out of 6 bulbs is actually working. Our kinetic switches don't work, so I literally have to go to the consumer unit and switch the entire circuit off and then back on again. Hiya folks, and welcome back to the show. I want to make a quick video about smart light bulbs. They're not top of the range or anything, they're just like, I think they're about the cheapest ones, screw fix sell. But I've been running these in the studio room for over a year now and I haven't had any problems at all. Everything has just worked. Now, before I show you how they work, how to set them up and what you can do and what kind of problems it can potentially solve, I just want to explain that I'm not a massive fan of smart devices, Internet of Things, those stupid speakers that you talk to. We don't have any of that in the house. And it's not because I'm a Luddite or anything like that. It's kind of the opposite side of things. I worked in IT for a long time. I know what these sort of things are capable of, especially devices that are set to have microphones switched on all the time. But if they're functional and fulfill some sort of purpose in life, then I'm happy to give them a bash and see what we can actually do with them. So as I say, this is the TCP Smart GU10 bulbs that I've got here, but they come in all different flavors, different fittings and that sort of thing. The nice thing is if you stick to one particular brand, you can control everything through one app. So that's what the bulb looks like. It's just a bog standard GU10 light bulb. But what this has in it, which really is quite clever, is that this is effectively a Wi-Fi enabled device. It sits on your home network and this can be completely controlled via an app on your phone. So for the purposes of showing you how this works, I'm just going to put it in this kind of angle poise table light thing. Obviously you generally wouldn't put a smart light bulb in a light like this, but it's just so I can show you how it all works. I'll switch it off, take out the dumb GU10 bulb that's in there at the minute, and we'll swap it for the smart bulb. Switch it on. Why is that flickering so much? What the hell? Switch it on and we're basically straight into configuration mode, and that's why it's flashing like that. So I'll go into the TCP app on my phone. Sorry, ignore the flashing light. We'll stop it from flashing very shortly, but I'm just going to add a new room into this. So we'll go into room management. We're going to save for the purposes of this. It's going to be the living room. Save that. And then from the home menu, I'm just going to add a device. So add device. It should discover it automatically. We'll click add. Enter your Wi-Fi information, so your SSID and your password, and do next. And then you know it's kind of working if it stops flashing, and there we go. TCP Smart GU10 has been added automatically, and the first thing it's going to do is do a quick firmware update on the bulb itself. That's right, the bulb has firmware, so we'll do update now. Firmware update found. We'll do update. Yes, start update. I don't know why it's saying the Wi-Fi signal is weak. We'll ignore that. And then from here, you've got control over the light bulb. So at the minute it's set on a warm kind of light. If I change it to that, it's gone on to a kind of cool light. We can also dim the light from here as well. And obviously we can switch it on and off. I'll show you some of the other things a little bit later on. But obviously once you've got this all set up, you can then put this into a group and you can group all your light bulbs together so you can control them all at the same time. You can then do things like controlling the color of the bulb. So it's set on a kind of red there. It's completely RGB, so you can set it to literally any color you want. This is the main reason that I've got the bulbs in the studio room, because for filming, it's very useful to have a white light. But for actually working, it's quite nice to have a much warmer light. Now, whether or not that shows up on camera is anyone's guess, because the camera is going to automatically adjust the white balance, but you get the general kind of idea. As I say, you've got all these color settings, so if you want like funky mood lighting and stuff like that, you can do all that from there as well. You can then set up things like scenes. So for example, it has a few scenes built in where it automatically changes colour, a bit like kind of disco lights or whatever. You can get it, I think, to synchronise along to music as well, which I haven't got that set up at the minute, but you can get it so your lighting changes. Oh yeah, the music syncs at the top there. So because I'm making noises, it's changing the light colour, which, you know, I suppose if you're setting up some sort of party lighting or something, that could be useful. For me, the main use that I'm going to be using these for, apart from having full control over the colour temperature, is being able to dim the lighting in certain rooms where we don't have a dimmer. And then obviously once it is all set up, you can then do things such as assigning it to a particular room. So if I just go into the settings for this particular bulb, we can change the name of it first of all, and we're just going to keep the icon as a bulb, but you can change the icon to anything you want. The location, we're going to say that is living room. I just tend to number the bulbs. We'll change it to GU10 number 1, save that. And then the nice thing about it, once you've got the bulb set the way you want it, is that you don't really need to use the app anymore. You can just switch it on and off from the switch like a normal light bulb, and it's basically got a memory in it, and it remembers however it was last set, and it will just default to that. So for example, if I change the color of it to like blue, so yeah, we'll dim it down so we've got like quite a dim blue light there. And if I now just switch it off at the main switch, and you can leave that as long as you like. I've tested it in the studio and it still remembers whatever it was set on, and it'll just come back to the way it was, only not dim for some reason. So in terms of a direct comparison, that's the smart GU10 bulb on the left, and that's a non-smart normal GU10 bulb on the right. I've got the smart bulb set on its warmest setting, and to my eyes it pretty much perfectly matches the non-smart warm white bulb, which has a colour temperature of 2700K. My only slight reservation is that the beam from the smart bulb seems to be slightly more spread than the beam you get from the non-smart normal GU10 bulb, and as such the floor in this area underneath the non-smart bulb looks a little bit brighter than the floor underneath the smart bulb. But looking at them, to my eyes, the amount of light coming off them looks about the same. I think it's just because this one has a slightly more spread beam on it. Do you reckon, chicken, do you worry about smart light bulbs? So I've swapped out all of these bulbs. These are all smart bulbs now. What could possibly go wrong? So I've added all the bulbs into the app. I've done the firmware update on every single one of them. I've also created a couple of groups so that we can control either the front lights, the back lights, or all of the lights in one go. But you will straight away see here, a small problem is that it thinks 2 of the bulbs are switched off at the moment, and they definitely aren't. So bearing in mind that the way this works is that my mobile phone is obviously talking on the wireless network to our router, and our router is literally just around the corner, just there. I can see it from here, and the door's open as well. We can't really get in a better situation in terms of how close these bulbs are to the router, unless the router was literally in the living room. But here lies the reality of smart bulb ownership. In 2024, I thought this sort of thing would work by now, but you know, we don't have hoverboards or anything. Generally deeply disappointed. So the first thing I'm going to try, just as a little test, is I will just go onto the app and I will try dimming the bulbs. Let's see what happens when I dim the bulbs. Okay, well, 4 of them have dimmed, and 2 of them haven't done anything, and I'll now put them all on full brightness. So I've now put them all on full brightness. Those 2 are still on their dim setting. I'm not entirely sure what that one's doing. Let's change the colour of them, because that'll make it much more obvious which ones have actually got a signal. So let's change them all to blue for argument's sake. Well, okay, again, that's worked for 4 of them, but these 2 are still on whatever they were on earlier. I'll try again. Now these 3 have changed, but that one's still on blue. I mean, it looks quite funky, I'll give you that, but we'll try green for argument's sake. Okay. Oh well, that one's finally caught up. These 2 still aren't doing anything. We'll change back to normal white light. So at least they're all kind of matching now. We'll try fully dimming them. Again, these two bulbs, these ones just aren't behaving at all at the moment. And unfortunately, this is the reality of the way I'm finding smart bulbs are generally operating still in 2024. They're absolutely fine in the studio room because I've got the router is literally in the room with the bulbs, and I think they've got such a good signal, there's really no reason for them not to work. But again, I mean, this is probably 10 foot away from the router, so there's really no excuse for those not picking a signal up. And the other thing is as well, is that it's so intermittent. Sometimes they work absolutely perfectly for days, and then sometimes they'll behave in a really random way where the odd bulb just doesn't work at all. Generally, I find the only way to get them to behave is to switch them on and off at the main switch on the wall. That introduces another problem, by the way, which I'll tell you about in a minute, but let's just try that to see if that fixes these two bulbs. So we'll try dimming them all again, and now nothing's working. Sometimes it can take a little while after switching them off and back on for them to obviously sort themselves out on the network or whatever they're doing behind the scenes. Again, I'll put it on a colour. So, right, so I'm going to set everything to red. The only bulb that is changing now is that one there. So 1 out of 6 bulbs is actually working. Try changing them to blue. Way, we've got 1, 2, 3 are now working. That one's not doing anything still. That one's now working, but now that one and that one isn't doing anything. We'll change it to green. Yeah, so we've now got 1, 2, 3 that are just not behaving at all. Oh, we've got 4, 5. We've got 5 working. Come on. Last bulb. Generally, once they start working, they'll continue working for the rest of the night, but it's just, it's a little bit hit and miss. And sometimes you'll change it and it'll just catch up about a minute later. So for example, I've got them all set on green at the minute, but these ones just haven't picked that up. These are still on blue, and that one's still on blue. Oh, that one's just changed to green. Again, looks quite funky though. So anyway, I've changed them to warm white. That one seems to be stuck on blue indefinitely. Oh, no, it's changed. They're all behaving at the minute. Let's see if we can get them all to dim at the same time. Come on. There we go. Now they're all working perfectly. I don't know if it's just one of those strange things where it just takes a while for them to sort themselves out on the network or what, but I've had, as I say, I've had times where sometimes they'll work perfectly for like an entire night or for several days, and then suddenly they'll just stop working altogether. Again, just to illustrate all of this, I'll put them on a colour. So it did change eventually. Let's try red. Yeah, they're all behaving now. So that is kind of the reality. It can be quite frustrating at times when all you want to do is either switch the lights on or off, or you just want to dim the lights or whatever, and they're just not behaving at all. And that leads me on to another small problem that we've got. So I'm just going to dim all of the bulbs to the lowest setting that you can go on. So this is quite a nice, you know, you're sitting in the evening with a fire on and you want all of the bulbs just as dim as they'll go. And then you finish watching your movie for the night and you decide you're going to bed, you switch the lights off, and oh, our kinetic switches don't work when the lights are dimmed. And yes, this is a remote kinetic switch, by the way. The master switch is round the back of this door here, and even that one doesn't do anything while the lights are dimmed. You have to undim the lights before the kinetic switches work. I think you must have to have a certain voltage going through the system or a certain amount of current going through the system before kinetic switches work. So what I'll have to do is bring the lights up to say 50%, hope they work, because remember, sometimes they don't work, and if they get stuck on the dimmest setting, I can't switch them on and off from here. So I literally have to go to the consumer unit and switch the entire circuit off and then back on again for the lights to reset themselves so that I can then control them from the app. So yeah, modern technology, it's great. So I've got them on 50% now. This should work. What do you think, chicken? Can you fix it? Is this not a problem in your life? He ate yet another mouse today, by the way. This is after a squirrel incident the other day that you can see on Instagram if it's of any interest. So we were debating changing these two GU10s here and the two GU10s at that end for smart bulbs to give us a bit more flexibility for, you know, mood lighting and things like that in the kitchen diner area. But I don't think we're going to bother. I think it's just going to be a total pain in the backside. These bulbs especially are much further away from the router, so if the ones in the living room don't work properly, these don't stand a chance. So we're just going to keep these on normal warm white LED GU10s and we'll live with it. It's absolutely fine. I think the kind of moral of this story is that we're living in this kind of age where we're worried about AI taking over the world and technology in general just kind of ruling all of our lives. And I think there's a place for certain types of technology and there's a place where it's just not really needed. At the end of the day, the reason we've got the smart bulbs in the living room is because I can't be bothered to chase the walls to put proper switches in the correct place on the right side of the door, and that would also let me just put a normal dimmer switch in, so that would be a major pain in the neck. So for that room, for all of the problems that you run into with smart bulbs, it's still easier than doing all that. But here in the kitchen diner, where we really like having the quite directional lighting from the normal bulbs, smart bulbs are just going to muck all of that up. We're going to end up with like wishy-washy lighting that just doesn't work half the time. Now, I don't want this to come across as being too negative about the technology. It genuinely has some very clever uses. You can trigger devices to do stuff when the local weather changes, when your location changes, on a certain schedule, or when the status of another smart device changes. So you could set up a schedule to dim your lights automatically and change to a warmer colour temperature at night time. Likewise, you know those expensive wake-up lights that simulate a sunrise by changing colour temperature gradually when it's time to get up? Well, you can replicate most of that functionality with your mobile phone and a £10 smart bulb. I think my biggest gripe though is that it's similar to a lot of tech I come across these days. They've mastered all the fancy stuff, but the core functionality is just a bit rubbish. So let me know what you think. Have you had any experiences with smart bulbs that actually work? I'm particularly interested to hear from tradespeople because I would never install these for a customer because they're just too hit and miss. They're going to be on the phone to you every 2 seconds saying, oh, my bulbs aren't working properly. So to electricians out there, what do you do smart bulb wise? Do you put up with it, or do you just tell the customer they can have them but they're on their own when they go wrong? I think the best way I can view them is as quite a useful problem solver, but if you don't need them, then don't bother. Hopefully you've got something from that. We'll leave it there for tonight because it's nearly 7 o'clock. I think it's time to clock off. For now, folks, look after each other, be nice to one another. We shall see you next time. Tatty bye.